Good morning, everyone. Andrew Edwards from Dirty Boots here, just to talk today about Ty Segall's new record, Emotional Muggers. Ty Segall is a Californian artist specializing in everything garage rock. You know, there's a psychedelia in there, there's a lot of kind of indie energy. It's got that standard rock band lineup, which is sort of the thing that garage rock's all about now. Somehow he's managed to release an album every year since his debut in 2008, most notably Sleeper and Manipulator, my two favorites of his. He's had a ton of side projects as well, and he's seen a very serious meteoric rise, which has been capped off by this album, Emotional Muggers. He has been getting a ton of mainstream attention as well, especially after his performance on Stephen Colbert show, where he dressed up as this kind of surreal clown and he was throwing candy into the audience and he had like what looked like a diabetic coma. Not only that, but he had a brilliant, and I mean brilliant, performance on the KEXP show. You know, you've really got to see it to believe it, especially his KEXP show. Very outlandish. This guy's all about the performance art. You know, he's a musician first, performance artist second. He really delivers the musical material with a lot of theatrics and a lot of unique characters as well. You know, if I had to make a comparison or an analogy, I'd say he's like David Bowie if David Bowie was the frontman for the Butthole Surfers. I would definitely recommend Ty Segall's work if you're a fan of the Butthole Surfers, Captain Beefheart, or VOCs. You know, it's very experimental but very underground style music. It's really quite exciting. But I digress. Let's talk about the album. Let's go into it. Let's go into Ty Segall, Emotional Muggers. Skealer, get out of here. First track on this record, Skealer. It's really great. It's really disjunct, it's really torn apart, very syncopated as well. Very catchy. Shouldn't be catchy, somehow manages to be catchy. You know, it really sets the dynamic for the rest of the album. These sort of instruments you should expect to hear, like the FM synths against these really kind of classic guitar tones. And Ty gives a really bipolar performance as well, kind of jumping between up here and then going all the way down there. It's really very surreal. It's a very twisted sound. There are some really sick kind of breaks with noise. There's a lot of nonsense on this record, but it all works. And production wise, almost all the instruments are just bedded in spring reverb. You know, it really could pass for being performed in a garage. Really takes the garage rock side seriously. There are some very slick lyrics, really exemplifies the kind of slimy, perverted sound that the record's going for. You know, but despite that, it still covers the theme very well. There's a great line in there where it's, I'm still stuck in my old shoes waiting for that finger feeling. You know, it's a very grunge lyric, it's a very dirty Converse shoes kind of lyric. But it still covers the theme really well. It references an older Ty Segall track from about 6 years ago. It talks about being stuck in his old shoes, kind of wanting to move on, waiting for that creative spike again. Following Skealer, we go into California Hills. Very schizophrenic track. If you've ever wondered what goes through Charles Manson's head, it probably sounds like this song. You know, it just snaps between this smooth, sludgy, classic rock sound to these snippets of kind of California punk. You know, really breakneck kind of track. It's a very brief song as well, at least it feels like it. It's lyrically gorgeous, really dives into the topic of kind of California rich kids and drug culture. There's a really lovely line in there where it's, the gift of affluent life was wasted on the fickle life. Very poetic, very simple, very catchy, very Kafka-esque. Emotional Mugger, the title track of this album. It has the same disjunct sound as Skealer. It's very riffy, the same kind of vocal delivery, very split apart, very fuzzed out kind of sound as well. It sounds a lot like The Doors, you know, it's very kind of classic Californian sound. Sort of the way it all develops, the kind of theatrics in Ty Segall's delivery. You know, all the builds and all the twist, the very provocative and very surrealist lyrics. But this particular track, Emotional Muggers, didn't really jump out at me a whole lot. The next track, Breakfast Eggs. There's a lot of candy in this album. There's a lot of references to candy in the lyrics. You know, it's a very simple metaphor, but it's very effective as well. You know, really works for the topic of greed and overindulgence. You know, very consistent throughout. There's a clear theme here. But seriously, this track, Breakfast Eggs, It's a very straightforward track again, very simple, but very promiscuous and very sexual as well. And it's like a sick twist on cock rock. You've got all these riffs going on. The guitar tone sounds almost exactly like Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. I don't know if that was the intention, but it's all very perverted. Gonna eat some more fucking potatoes. Like, comment, subscribe if you like potatoes as well. The next track, Diversion, has a very ferocious opening, very squealy synth to use to break up the structure here. The vocal style is very Beach Boys, very Californian, but with a real helter-skelter sort of twist on everything. Baby Big Man, easily my favorite track on this album. There's just so much going on that just shouldn't. It's so raw, it's very gritty, and very analog sonically as well. There's a lot of swagger going on in amongst all the psychedelics. There's a very strong contrast between the vocal size and the weight of the bass end itself. Mandy Cream is a really Captain Beefheart style track. It's a very junky sort of song over the top of this really fucked out 5/8 rhythm. There's a really snarly, cracked out vocal delivery, and Ty introduces a couple ideas. He sort of expands on the Candy theme by introducing the character Candy Sam. And he also references a Mighty Booth character, Milky Joe. Don't know if this is intentional or not, but I'll take it. Candy Sam is it's a really simple rock track, but the production's really experimental on this. The whole band just seems to pan hard from the left to the right in the verse. It really trips up the listener. It really keeps you trying to catch up with them. You know, really, the whole production on this record really takes advantage of the stereo field at hand. It's very simple, but it's very out there, sort of a kind of Beatlesy. This track, though, Candy Sam, it's easily the most accessible song on this record. Really the easiest to listen to, probably the poppiest, most likely to be the hit single from this record anyway, despite its lyrical content at least. It's got a great outro. I love a good outro. The whole band seems to fade out while there's acoustic guitar, the children singing the main hook just kind of fade in. It's a really trippy, psychedelic, surrealist but playful kind of aesthetic on this record. Skealer 2 is nothing like the first Skealer track. To be honest, it's nothing like the rest of the album. It doesn't step too far out, but it's definitely out there. Introduces a lot of new instruments and a lot of new styles, really. There's kind of skiffle type production going on, some hand claps. The vocals take on a new idea. It's very anthemic, very sort of bluesy. It's a very loose rhythm going on in the background here. There's a sort of guitar solo panned hard to the left that just keeps going and going. There's a lot of detail here. There's a lot to discover. There's a lot to find. There's a lot to grab onto in this roller coaster ride that Ty Segall is just offering up to us. You know, it's so odd. It's really unique. This whole record, really. Some really brilliant textures coming through. It's very standout and just broadens the garage scope at hand here. And it just goes on and it descends into just some really weird shit. These vocals just hammering out, just Skealer! It's frantic. It's fucking weird. The next track, Wutwus. That's W-U-O-T-W-S. Is kind of a break from the album. It's complete nonsense, to be honest. But it's the same sort of nonsense that you get from Revolution Number 9 by the Beatles. The layering of ideas, the sampling going on, the way everything kind of fades in and out. It's a kind of nice refrain. It's not often that this kind of stuff works, but it just breaks the album up quite nicely. It's a good soundscape. I mean, I don't even know how to rate this. It's just a break, you know, but it's not pointless. It does work. There's nothing really to talk about on this track, at least. But I just want to take a moment to say how great the production has been on this record. It's not only been very experimental with the hard panning, but everything has been clear. The instrumentation, it's not grandiose. It's just very simple, very much what it is. Just interesting percussion, an FM synth, some guitars, a bass. But the way they use their instruments, the way they pad them out with effects, or just simply the parts they play, like the mad solos going on. It really works, and you know, it makes it sound very interesting. It's always great to see a band have these limits set upon themselves, and then they just break those limits. by taking another step with their production. It's a great example of lo-fi production as well, where you don't have to overdo anything. There's no set of rules. It's just trying to create an overall cohesive artistic album. So, you know, just massive kudos to the team that worked on this album. Really, really great stuff so far. And then the final track, Magazine. It's very relaxing to start out. It's very smooth, but it's very eerie at the same time. There's this kind of drone bass just going on and on over the top. You know, how deep and how slow this track is, while also being very creepy. It's like being swallowed by a beanbag, you know? The way it just kind of envelops over you and you don't know whether to panic or not. Again, standout production. Really sweet claps in the breaks. Really gives the track a lot more snap. Vocally, very haunting, very simple, occasionally harmonizing with each other. It's sort of like Beatles, like the Lennon-McCartney kind of combination of vocals. And it doesn't so much build. With a lot of tracks like this, you expect it to go on and open up, but it stays on this really nice level. And then at the end, the guitarist has a seizure. And I mean a complete seizure. He goes nuts. This is like full noise rock sort of nuts. Very Merzbow guitar sounds. It's really, really lovely here. And then that's it. That's the end of the album. It's only 35 minutes long. It's very simple. It's very to the point, very straight. Let's break it down. Here's the conclusion. Ugh. I really like this record. You know, there's no bullshit here, while still bringing a lot of material to the table. You know, it doesn't feel like it's too much. You know, it's really fresh, but I mean, sure, it's very old school at the same time. But unlike Dive's record, for example, Ty's band really reinvents the style, really approaches it with new ideas. And that's what gives genres, you know, lasting power. That's what gives this style of music lasting power. When new bands kind of take old ideas but refresh them, you know, rejuvenate them, give them new life. So let me ask you something, right? When was the last time you listened to a record that really challenged you? And I mean, like, challenged you with something quite unheard of, something that's very natural but very abrasive. And that's essentially what this album is. My laptop's gone off. And that's essentially what this album is. You know, it's a filthy acid trip of a record. You know, there's something very not quite right going on, but it's quite paranoid at the same time. Really surreal. I've said surreal 1,000 times, but that's the only way to describe this record. Overall, I'm going to give this album a decent grade. I'm going to give it a straight A. You know, it's not really flawed enough to warrant a minus, but it's not quite there for a plus. While I was still very gripped and very immersed in what Ty Segall was going for, the record still didn't feel like it had a lot of lasting power. You know, I gave it 3 listens, but I can't see myself actually returning to this album, you know? That being said, Ty will surely be back with a very different record in like the next hour, or probably the next year. So overall, one of the strongest records I've heard this year so far. I really loved it. There's a lot of great ideas in there, some really great material. You know, Ty Segall just gives a masterclass on garage rock and a performance dynamic. The production, you know, I can't give them enough credit. Everything just works here. But I'm not going to go on too long. Thanks for watching. Thanks for checking it out. Go listen to the album if you haven't. If you already have, tell me what you thought about it. You know, do you agree with my thoughts? Do you disagree? And make sure you subscribe as well. You saw me eating potatoes. I don't want to eat potatoes forever. Subscribe. Also, we got some new material coming out soon. We're going to be doing a Best of the Noughties series. I'm going to start doing classic albums as well. So subscribe. Make sure you can keep up with that. There's going to be a lot of great stuff coming out soon. I'm really excited. Thanks again, and really enjoy the rest of your day, guys.